How do you feel about influencers? Annoyed if they're running around and hawking products or destinations, or helpful knowledge givers? Or maybe you're just jealous because you don't get those perks. I know I can be sometimes. But that's not the type of influencer we're talking about today. Before there was YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok, there were and still are political influencers. These are people that politicians listen to, either in their private lives or in the public arena. If you don't have a relationship with a politician and you need to sway their vote, then you want to get those influencers to be your brand, or in our case, policy ambassador. On today's Better Advocacy in 10 minutes or less, we're going to learn what political influencers are and how you can build fruitful relationships with them. First, you need to identify your target politicians. These are the people you want to influence because they have the power to stop your bill. This could be the committee chair, speaker, majority leader, or governor. In reality, this level of work is usually reserved for the governor. It can be helpful at the start of session to make sure the majority leader or committee chair know about your policy, but not necessary. Unless, and this is when it's important to target these legislative power brokers, unless there are forces trying to kill your bill before it even gets heard. This might mean it's slow to be assigned to committee, or it initially gets assigned to a subcommittee that never meets. Yes, that's a thing. Or you're not seeing it docketed on its assigned committee. Sometimes it can just be overworked staff who are behind. Other times it means someone is working against you. The best way to find out is to ask your patron or their staff. They want this bill heard as much as you do. And they can usually figure out what's going on behind the scenes and tell you who that roadblock is. And that's really why you're targeting just one or two people with this strategy. Not everyone is a roadblock. Most of the time, it's only a couple people that hold the power to kill or advance your bill. All right, now that you've identified the politician or politicians you need to influence, you want to figure out who they listen to. These are your influencers, and they fall into three categories: personal, political, and media. I know I couldn't find a fancy P word for media. Oh, you know what? Press. Personal, political, and press. Who you target will depend on your policy area, personal network, and time. Those personal influencers can be the most powerful, but also the most difficult to reach unless you already have a relationship with them. These are the people that they know, or your targets know, in their personal lives. Friends, families, mentors, and peers. These are the folks they spend time with outside of their political duties. The ones that can casually bring up your policy at a friendly dinner or on the proverbial, or oftentimes real, golf course. Because these folks are approaching the politician as a friend, not a lobbyist or power broker, your message gets through more easily. As I mentioned earlier, these relationships can be hard to build. But if you are intentional in your networking and ethical in your interactions, you will meet personal influencers like this. The trick is sustaining the relationship and not becoming someone who is just trying to use them. Now, the political are their allies, usually in their party, that they listen to. If you spend much time in the halls of legislative office buildings, you'll learn pretty quickly that there are certain people who are seen as experts in certain areas, and that legislators also have their best friends to listen to. If you don't know this already, another advocate probably does. Ask around. Maybe their political bestie is someone you or one of your allies already has a good relationship with. Now, the press, for that next P, press are the media outlets that they listen to or respect. And there is a difference. Listen to are those that align with their political views, papers, blogs, columnists, etc. Respect are the ones that carry influence across the board, no matter what type of political flavor your politician might be. These are usually their hometown paper, your major statewide papers, or those from the capital city and largest metro areas in your state. They can also be national news outlets, though these are a much more difficult way to get your message out. Your best bet is the local paper of your target politician. Yes, I said paper, as in newspaper. These still have an outsized influence over politicians. Want to learn more? You can check out my video on media hierarchy. There's a link to it above me. I'm not going to point to which way it is because I can never remember which one it is. All right, back to these media places, this press. Your most powerful option is to pitch a reporter to a story on your policy. Tell them who's hurting, why this bill is important, and how lives and communities will be changed. When it's coming directly from the paper as this earned media story, that's going to carry the most weight. Now, if you can't get that, and that's understandable, those are hard to come by, pitch an op-ed that you've written in support of your policy. The sooner you can do this, the better, especially during the legislative session. All sorts of interest groups and politicians want that space too. Now, if both of these fail, which hopefully they won't, then a letter to the editor will still get your points out there, just without the cachet of the other two. And hey, check back soon for a video on these. All right, now that you've identified the influencers, you have to be honest about who you can reach. Not every influencer is easily accessible. You can spend a lot of time trying to get an in with a childhood bestie or getting an article in that top paper. Or you can focus your efforts on something more practical. Evaluate your network and skills. A well-crafted op-ed, even if it lacks a marquee author, can get placed in a major paper. At the same time, allies who live in and are active in the same community as your targeted influencers may already have mutual friends. Be realistic about the best use of your time and resources, but don't sell yourself short. And that brings us to our last point. Create a plan, both short-term and long-term. If you're watching this video, you may be searching for help right now. Figure out what you can do before your deadline. That is when the governor needs to sign or veto, or when bills need to be docketed, whatever it is. Figure out what you can accomplish between now and then. But don't stop there. Once you get past this initial crunch, take a step back and look at the big picture. Who are the influencers you can influence a year or two from now if you start building relationships today? Maybe it's editors of papers. Maybe it is that childhood best friend of the governor because in your research you found out your kids play in the same travel league. This is thinking long term, not just this session, but how can I build lasting relationships with folks over the years? One final note before we wrap up. You may be asking, why aren't we doing this with politicians? Well, you should be. That was in my Building Relationships with Legislators video, which once again will be linked above me on one of these sides. This is an extension of that because it's always good to have the same message coming at them from different people. And hey, that's the end of my message for you today. Check back soon for more
Better advocacy in 10 minutes or less.